And this is helpful as our final step in understanding the results of the study that I did. Because if what matters in music is our perception of sound, which is what balance is, then we can look at the results here. And we can see that if the visual information changes our perception of the sound, then it's done more than alter perception. It's actually changed the music. Because sound becomes music only in the mind of the listener. If we were to look at say, if you brought your favorite CD or MP3 in, and we did an acoustic analysis, we find there's way too much energy on the low end. And so I could fix it for you and put equal energy all over, in which case you probably wouldn't be happy because it would sound awful, like the bass would be gone and it would be screeching on the high end. But that's just, I could say, well, it's just a problem with your hearing. That's just the way human beings work. Here's the right balance, acoustically speaking. You wouldn't want to listen to that recording. Like, no one would buy that. Because what we care about in music is the experience of the listener. And this raises some interesting questions then about how to best practice music. Well, for example, are blind auditions really fair? If you're robbing a performer and an audience of the visual information which is important for musical communication, then I can't, when I'm playing, communicate what I want to you using the gesture. Because remember, you can't change the acoustic duration of a marimba note. It's just not physically possible. If you're watching, I can make you hear what I want you to hear, and that's the whole point of music. I mean, isn't it? The performer's on stage trying to communicate something with his audience. And if you can do it with visual information, then I say go for it. Because that's what we want, is that the best experience we can give our listeners. This also means that maybe CDs aren't the best way to necessarily communicate music. DVDs, including the visual information, give you more options. Now, I would never say that like a CD is not music, or just the audio alone isn't music. It's one way of listening to music. It's similar to when you talk on a phone. It would be ridiculous to say you can't communicate over the phone, because obviously we can have a conversation even if you can't see my gestures and you can't see the lip movements. But we all know that communicating face-to-face is generally better and more richer. Being able to see what I'm doing, even things that don't have any acoustic consequence, helps you to understand what I'm talking about. And music is very much like that. Of course we can have music in the absence of visual information, but it's just a better and richer experience with the visual information than without it. So there's just two things I want to do quickly before I'm going to summarize, because we went through a lot of ground here, and I want to make sure you can remember this and tell your parents and friends that you understand what music is and how music cognition works, and that you think this is a great new field. Hopefully. So the first off is that if you're interested in music cognition, I just have a shameless plug here. McMaster University, we have a whole institute for the study of music in the mind. We recently received a $6 million award to build a small recital hall. We're going to have touchpad responders in all the seats, so we can have performances and have people respond to what they're hearing. We're going to have 36 seats wired up with stuff that monitors your brain and your heart rate, and so we can see how different performances affect your physiological responses. McMaster is really a world leader in the area of music cognition. We started what I know, as far as I know, is the only undergraduate specialization in music cognition that students can enter either from music or psychology. So you can get an undergrad degree in psychology with a specialization in music cognition, or an undergrad degree in music with a specialization in music cognition. We have multiple music cognition researchers with the lab to give students research opportunities. And I went and checked, just so you know, the international tuition at McMaster is actually less than going out of state to most universities in the US. The tuition is much lower in Canada. So if this is something that's interesting, I just wanted to mention that, because I had no idea that any of this stuff was out there when I started college, which was a little while ago. Second thing I want to do is thank a couple things for the chance to be here. Innovative Percussion makes some great sticks and mallets, and Sabian Cymbals makes some great cymbals. They help sponsor things like this so I can come and talk to you about this stuff. McMaster Institute for Music in the Mind has also been helpful in getting me out and doing some of these things. But there's also one more person I think is important to thank that you'll probably recognize, Mr. Holder. I knew that when I was a student here, we had a really great music program, but it wasn't really until I went to college and then talked to other people about what their high school music programs were that I really started to understand just how amazing the whole music department is here. So I just wanted to thank him for inviting me and for teaching us all this great stuff about music. So here we go. Here's the bottom line summary of all the ground we covered in these 12 minutes. We started off with this question that I thought was pretty simple. Does gesture length matter? It's a yes or no question. It's taken 6 years of my life to get here. The answer is both yes and no. the gesture doesn't matter, but perceptually it does. So this brings us to the next stage, where we have to ask, why are these two things different? How come what I'm hearing is not exactly what's out there acoustically? Well, that's because we need to understand how perception works. We have these illusions, which demonstrate that our perception is not in one-to-one correspondence with the world. So we have the bumps and the dents. It changes depending on the orientation, because your brain's always thinking for you. Because your brain's thinking for you, it has to make decisions about what sights and sounds to bind together. So within the group effect, visual information can really change what we're hearing. And then, this is what's happening with the marimba illusion. Your brain is thinking for you. It's binding together the auditory and the visual information. And here, it's not that your brain is sort of trying to give marimbas a way to control note duration. I mean, your brain's just trying to understand what's out in the world. Percussionists have just sort of accidentally stumbled across this and been using it for years and years to control the experience of audiences, most of the time without any idea of what's going on. Because you talk to people that use the gestures and they think, oh, it's changing the acoustic duration of the note, when actually it has no effect on the acoustic duration. It just changes the perception. And so in the end, this raises the philosophical question about where does music exist. I think the balance example shows that what we care about in music is not just the acoustic information. We care about the perception of that information. And so when I talk about this at music conferences and stuff, I get sort of different opinions of response. Like, some people think it's really interesting. Some people think it's blasphemous to talk about visual information in music. And then some people say, like, well, I knew this all along. Like, I use these gestures. Like, I know that's how it works. It's somewhat true, but also not really. The best way I can explain this is a couple of years ago, I was living in Chicago. A friend of mine was playing at a bar downtown. And he's a great drum set player, so a couple of friends in the car went to go see him. We were a bunch of music grad students, and no one thought to write down the address of where the bar was. So we were all like, I thought you were going to get it. No, I thought you were going to get it. So we're like calling everyone on their cell phones, and we couldn't find the bar. No one answered, so we were driving all around downtown. Finally, after about an hour, we gave up. We headed back to where we were living. We figured we'd just stop here, hang out at this place for a while, because as long as we're downtown, we might. And we were talking, for a little while, and before long, someone went to the bathroom, and they come back, and he's like, "You're not going to believe this." Well, it turns out when you go around the corner of the bathroom, there's our buddy playing the drum set in this bar. So we had accidentally navigated to the place that we got lost trying to find initially without knowing where it was. And that, I think, is the best parallel to this research. People have been using these gestures, have been accomplishing their goal, but not the way that they thought they were. They're accidentally changing perception in a way they can't change the acoustics, and so it sort of worked, but never for the reason that they thought. Because in the end, the gestures can't change the sound of the note, but they can change the way the note sounds. And that's what matters in the context of music. So that's all I have for you. Thank you guys. You've been a really great class.